me?
Yes. Yes, we could hear and see you.
Okay, great. Great.
You're coming through fine, Celeste.
All right.
Okay, let's start. We're excited to again have Elizabeth Varadan, who's a former elementary teacher, and she writes both for children and adults. In fact, doing some research this morning, I ran across one of her children's books. She was born in Reno, Nevada, but her family traveled a lot, mainly in California, so she considers herself to be a Californian. She published fiction for children, includes MG Mystery, Imogene, and the Case of the Missing Pearls, a picture book, Dragonella, and a collection of stories for children ages 7 to 70, The Carnival of the Animals. And that's what I ran across today. So I got to see the cover. Two cozy mysteries for adults, Deadly Vintage and Deadly Verse. I just received a copy of Deadly Vintage, and I really am eager to read it. And Deadly Verse is awesome, and it's set in Portugal. And being Portuguese is all pretty cool to me. They were published by Bellinger Books in 2019 and 2022, respectively.
I'm sorry, what was the second title of the mysteries?
Deadly Verse.
Oh, Deadly Verse. Oh,
Yeah. It's based on a very famous poet, Camões, Portuguese poet. It's supposed to be a missing document written by him.
I see.
Her poetry has appeared in the Song of San Joaquin, the Ophidian Brevities, Stray Branch, Vine Leaves Literary Journal, Poems for All Little Books, and her poem Return to India was selected as an International Merit Award winner in the Atlanta Review in 2017 International Poetry Competition. Her chapbook, Saudade, 30 Poems of Longing, was published by Finishing Line Press in 2020. And so the words, my pronunciation is not great, but Saudade. And that was one of my mother's favorite words growing up.
Yeah.
That and triste, which is like sad, something sad. For years, she and her husband divided their time between Sacramento, California, Braga, Portugal, and Tresulfi, Galicia, an autonomous region in Spain. Dreaming of Galicia, a new chapbook out on submission to various publishers, traces the years and experiences that she and her husband had in the small Galician village of Tresulfi. Am I saying that correctly? Tresulfi.
Yeah.
In 2021, they moved to Braga. They settled for her. They are the setting for her cozy mystery. And I have had a chance to see an advance copy of Dreaming of Galicia, and it is some really amazing poetry. I love it, and I know you will all. So I hope we hear some of those poems tonight. They're really, really good. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you. And Celeste, the two poetry groups, the Tuesday night group and what's now the Tuesday afternoon group at Heart, but it was Wednesday, had a lot of input into these poems. And Celeste was one of those poets. Input a few years ago. Oh, and Allegra had
I didn't catch everything that you said, Mitty. I didn't catch everything that you said, Mitty.
well, okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like that commercial. Can you hear me now? Okay. But I just was thanking the two poetry groups for their input into these poems. And you were part of the Wednesday group in those days, and you had some nice input into these poems.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And I want you to know I've always loved your poetry.
I love your poetry as well, Mitty.
Thank you. Okay, so just a little background on this. In 2005, my husband and I bought a house in Trasulfe, this little rural village outside of a small, charming city, but small, called Monforte de Lemos. Place in
Okay, I see somebody's picture. but I'm not getting any sound.
Sorry. You see someone?
Okay, now
Oh,
it's back
okay.
to you. Now it's back to
Oh.
you.
Okay. All right. I don't think if you don't see me, that's okay. Anyway, it's got a strong Celtic influence, and its language, Gallego, is related to Portuguese, although everyone speaks also Castellano Spanish as well. We spent, about 16 years going back and forth. The idea was we would spend extensive periods in this village and maybe retire to it. But over time, as much as we loved it and as much as we became part of that little village's community, we never quite took the leap, and we sold it in 2020. But it's never left our hearts. These poems are kind of a tribute to the warmth of the people and the many ways they enriched our lives and the way they continue to hold a place in our hearts. Now, as we go along, I'll throw in a little bit of Spanish or Gallego, but I try to explain it. But anytime you want to ask a question, I don't mind if you, between poems, interrupted. So the first one is the title poem, Dreaming of Galicia. I dream of Galicia, of an April morning. I walk down a wet, rutted road behind a flock of sheep. The shepherd prods them with a crooked staff, calling, Toma, Toma. Neighbors call greetings, Buenos dias, buenos dias, buenos. Cuckoos send echoes through the woods. I dream of a rain-washed morning with gorse gleaming through a gray haze. Spanish broom fans in white sprays. Daisies dot fields like mislaid stars. Clouds rise in the lower vale, lapping at slopes in gauzy waves. In memory, the cloud rises still in dreams, like mist into the day. I'm hearing, is anyone else hearing some other noises? No, just me? Maybe it's my computer. Anyway, Toma means take it, but it's used idiomatically, to hustle a flock along. The next one is Roadsides, and it's about a little woman that we later learned her name was Malucha. Were it not for the small woman with hat-shaded face herding cows, calling para, para, and prodding them with her walking stick. Were it not for the wild broom, lush and yellow, edging the slopes, while frenzied cuckoos call from hidden places in the woods. Were it not for the man on the tractor calling, Buenos dias, que calor, eh? Were it not for all of that, these could be the roadsides of home. And para is something they say stop, even though they're prodding them to go. They say para. And que calore means what a hot day. Now we move into the village itself. Our neighbors. Manolo is a lion without a mane. His hair is but a fringe beneath his cap. His smile is leonine, his spirit strong, And when he speaks, he roars as lions do. He and Ava are just down the lane. When he wants to talk to us, he thumps our kitchen window with his walking stick, thundering questions, rumbling daily news. Ava is soft-spoken, self-contained, cheerful despite her arthritic hands. She does the major work to guard his health. He had a heart attack some years ago. With stiff hands, Ava harvests grapes, makes wine, feeds the chickens, gathers eggs, cuts weeds, her small frame bent over an ancient scythe. Whatever the tedious task, she sees it through. The house and farm, though small, is their domain. There he was born, and there he courted her. She lived right down the road in the big house where her sister Raquel and her cats live now. Of 80 who once lived here, 6 remain year-round. In summer, others still return, retired from jobs that paid them through the years, brought back by memories that have accrued. Those who stayed behind do not complain. Miguel herds sheep. We see him on the road prompting his flock to hurry with his stick, muttering endearments to his dog, Tolene. Farther down the road from Raquel's house, Antonio and Maria tend their farm, their faces etched with a lifetime of wry wit, a stalwart humor as they till and sow. Manolo tries to talk to us, explain the many stories of the region's past in Spanish we can almost understand. We thumb our pocket lexicons for clues. Ava cuts bread and cheese and brings us wine. She makes us feel at home, like family, and knows our thanks despite our meager words. The heart communicates when words are few. Okay, this is the village bench one. I have 3 poems about that bench. At day's end, neighbors gather on the bench and recapitulate the day's events. Gallego, Castellano interweave their mingled words, melodious waterfalls, arpeggios of laughter, silent rests, infrequently a final crashing chord. Vibrant smiles reflect their hearts' fandangos. Eyes express 1,000 symphonies. Gestures slice the air with every stanza, the orchestrated music of their lives, until a pink glow stains the low horizon. A sliver moon hangs in the deepening sky, and taking leave, they slip away home. And fandango is a lively Spanish dance in rhythm, fast to slow, slow to fast. Okay, Ava's chickens. Ava's hens, 13 in all, lay eggs with stunning yolks, deep yellow, almost orange. The hens fluff feathers, cluck and fuss, run for bread and golden corn. Ava says it's the corn. The rooster struts among the hens, a red-combed sultan in his sarai, regarding his wives with pride. His footsteps firm, his beak agape, he loudly crows as if to say, it isn't really the corn. And a sarai is another name for harem. Okay, quemada. A quemada is a drink they make, which means burned, and it's made from their homemade aguardiente, which will tear your throat out. And okay, so quemada. The young have gone away. Only elders remain in these half-ruined villages with names that flow through dreams like waterfalls of music. Pinheiro, Remesar, Santalia, Omatu, Caceria, Vilar, Frechedo, Alfándega, Odocil, Trasulfe. Neighbors gave us huevos, vino, tarta, and castañas. Mornings we heard bleating lambs, soft fog hung over valleys not yet golden. The night of the quemada, Maria and Antonio brought an earthen bowl and cups. Fire flamed blue, smoke wisps curled, mingled redolences of orange and apple peel, burnt tinge of coffee bean, joined the mingled laughter as, in the time-worn house, in the dimming light, the stone walls sighed, remembering. And huevos are eggs, vino is wine, although they say vino, tarta is cake, and castañas are chestnuts. La vida es así, which means such is life. In scattered country fields, they plow the stony soil, scythe weeds and harvest grapes in never-ending toil. The grapes are crushed and pressed, and then the wine is stored, fermenting in the cellar until it can be poured for family celebrations, for neighbors needing cheer, for warmth in freezing winter when gusting winds appear. It matters not how poor or what the day's duress, the villagers in grace will share what they possess. From hardship comes a strength, ability to bear vicissitudes of life, a willingness to care, a glass of homemade wine, some bread, a slice of cheese, a few accepting words to put a soul at ease. They offer their support and hospitality and comforting advice. La vida es así. The harsher the conditions, the hardier the vine. Grapes grown in stony ground produce a finer wine. Okay, now we have Miguel's burros. He kept sheep across the lane from us, and he's one of the few people that still are alive there. The older burro trained the young. He grazes now in a neighbor's field, still useful at times to pull a plow, then rewarded with sun and shade. The Buddha stands amid tall grass, flicks at flies with her dark tail. Potatoes harvested, her job done. She grazes now in sun and shade. The burro, silver gray from age, with thinning fur and barrel ribs, his life of travail almost done, grazes there in sun and shade. The younger Buddha, full of strength, with dark stripes rippling on her neck, bends her face to dappled grass, content to graze in sun and shade. Young and old, they play their parts. As one declines, the other thrives. Thus the cycle of the field. Lives play out in sun and shade. Now, pulpo at the feria. Pulpo is Spanish for octopus, and feria is like the county fair or actually the city fair. It plays most of the larger villages have at least 2 fairs a month, and you can buy everything: shoes, clothing, tools for farming, tools for making your aguardiente, and so on. Okay, homemade jam, jelly, all of that. So this is pulpo at the feria. Tables and benches beckon. A woman beside the copper pot stirs the boiling octopus, snips tentacles and rounds for wooden bowls. Her husband takes them to a table, lavishes olive oil, shakes pimiento picante to taste. A waitress brings crusty bread slashed for easy tearing, and a bottle of red wine with tumblers. People come from nearby villages to shop and exchange gossip, then meet friends and relatives at the tent, greeting one another with exclamations, hugs, a kiss on both cheeks, an invitation to join a meal which is more than bread, more than wine, more than the aroma of hot olive oil, more than the pulpos speared with toothpicks. The air fills with joyful chatter, with each new bite and every sip. Voices explode in loving melody, as if a choir has burst into song, as if an opera highlights a story of love and death, of toil, of journeys, weddings, births, letters from afar, the hard years mixing with fiestas, tenors, bassos, sopranos blending in a harmony of memory and news. The Roman bridge at Forelos. In addition to their Celtic past, all of Galicia has a Roman past. We parked and walked into the village, a stop along pilgrim's route that culminates in Santiago de Compostela. We were not pilgrims. We had come to photograph the Roman bridge. Trod by weary feet for centuries, its time-worn span built to last on stone arches, a relic of antiquity above rushing waters flanked by thickets, it beckoned, a dusty jewel set in green. After pictures, we leaned against the wall and watched sky patterns splinter in the water. And then we spied her downriver. A woman knelt on the bank, washing clothes, sheltered by willows, unaware of our stares. She dipped each piece in rushing water, lathered it, pounded it on a rock, rinsed it, spread it on the grass and other stones. How patiently she labored amid green boughs and gurgling water with her rhythmic motions. We reached for our cameras. We paused, mesmerized after glimpsing her private world of cycles and seasons, of ageless tradition from forebears, enduring, constant. We quietly turned away. Okay, this is back to Manolo. Lion. The lion of the village cannot roar. His voice is but a whisper where before he thundered, waved his caña high and swore. The walking stick stands useless by the door. His fierce and fiery spirit burns no more. The flame now dwindles to a flickering core. The lion of the village roars no more. In caña is Cain. The next one is the visit, because both Manolo and Ava's sister, who had come to live with them very ill with a lung disease, had passed away. The visit. Last spring, he sat by the Galleria window. Your sister sat by the respirator near the hall. You were on the hard-backed chair between us and your husband, anxious. He couldn't hear, could barely see, his voice a shadow of what once it was. He craved the window's ever-changing light. He whispered, bring them wine. Your sister praying incessantly, tubes giving oxygen, prayers comfort. Even as she was mindful of guests, she asked, do you want wine? Seeing your own health dwindle, we declined. You were the one who would have to go to the bodega, draw wine from the cask, fill the diet soda bottle serving as a carafe. You must rest, we urged, despite disappointment on your face. Serving wine was hospitality, and you made the best wine in the village. We kept vigil with you between two failing invalids, talking about everything and nothing, talking about weather and its constant changes. Winter storms were fierce, the grapes were small. Small grapes make good wine. Do you want some wine? Now he is gone and she is gone. We do not mention them. The house is empty except for your live-in caretaker and visits from your daughters. One comes from a nearby village, the other from afar. Both use tender tones as if you are the daughter, they the parents, trying to soothe your bewilderment. We talk about everything and nothing, which is to say the weather, its uncontrollable fluctuations, the promise of new wine to bear them. And shortly after that, after they passed away, Ava died. And I had a poem called Elegy for Ava that I tried to read last summer and started crying. So you're not going to hear that poem. If this book gets published, you'll have to read it. But the Village Bench #3 sort of gives homage to the state of the village afterwards. Walking down the little lane, I come upon the bench again. Grasses push against the slats. Memories swarm the air like gnats. Here sits Ava, there Miguel, Manolo at one end, Raquel perched on a stone, while nearby stands Antonio talking with his hands. Elias from his balcony rail joins in with a humorous tale. Maria picks some figs to share. Contentment fills the evening air. Time has scattered them like seeds. The bench is overgrown with weeds. The fig tree drops uneaten fruit. And now the evening air is mute. I have one more if there's time, but I don't know how the time is.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay, I can either do that or read from Deadly Verse. Which would you prefer?
Oh, I would love both. I'm
Both.
great.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll stay in Galicia. Okay. Dreaming of Galicia #2. It closes the book. In dreams, again, I dream of walking misted roads and cloud-touched paths that wind beneath veiled slopes. The freshened air still damp from morning fog, imbued with memories and glimmered hopes. In dreams, I see the streamlet bordered fields, a farmer plowing with an ancient grace, centuries, traditions borne upon his back and traced upon his weather-beaten face. Again, I dream of rain-drenched village streets, umbrellas blooming on a silver day, cafe bars emitting welcome light to warm a traveler on the pilgrim's way. I see the rolls of hay in sunlit leaves and audios that once stored crops and grain, or pasture lands spread out on sloping glens, or ancient castles perched on high terrain. In dreams, I see Galicia once again. And an audio is a stone or wood structure for storing harvests. It's considered some by a Celtic in origin, and now it's actually a traditional landmark, a historic landmark. You can't move one. You can't tear one down. And they were used for harvest. They were stored on 4 pillars that went up the center and then went outward. And that was to keep the mice out. Okay, because the mice couldn't cling underground, upside down. And then the audio itself has little slats of stone or wood with openings between to keep the harvest fresh. I mean, it's really ingenious, some of these ancient ways of taking care of things. So that is from my as yet unpublished book, Dreaming of Galicia, and there's 45 poems in all. I read you 13, so it was really hard to leave some out. Are there any questions? I can't hear you for some reason. All of a
Go ahead and
sudden.
unmute yourself, and if people would like to ask questions or provide some feedback, I put in the
Oh,
chat.
I'm sorry.
I'm inviting people to unmute themselves. So if they would like to make some comments
oh.
or ask some questions.
Yeah.
And I've also put in the chat a link, an Amazon link that will give you a list of all of her publications. If you'd like to order one. Go ahead. Sorry, that was the cat.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, ma'am, for these wonderful poems. Is there more than one variation of Portuguese, the Portuguese language, do you know?
Is there more than one Portuguese language?
Well, in other words, what's the word I'm trying to find? Spanish has two different,
Oh, okay. Here, Spanish has like 5 different languages from different regions. You know, like the Basque region, and Gallego is like a form of ancient Spanish. Actually, it's a sister language to Portuguese.
I
They
see.
can understand each other across the border. But Portugal itself, my husband and I are trying to learn Portuguese, and they're a little different in accent. It's a challenging language, and they can always understand each other, but they have slightly different pronunciations in the north from the south, but not as a different language. But Galegan, or Galician, as it's sometimes called, is I always call it a cousin language, because much of the vocabulary is the same. Much of the pronunciation is the same. Yeah. And they can understand each other. Like yeah.
Do you think the language has changed much over the centuries? I mean, would Ferdinand and Isabella be speaking an entirely different language than people do today?
I don't know. I think all of language evolves like that.
Uh-huh.
You know, like English did from Middle English. Middle English had all the vowels that sound just like European vowels, you know.
Right.
So I think all of the language have shifted to somewhat, but I think that's such an interesting question. I'll have to ask our language teacher when we go back. We have and I'll have to ask her.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Thank you.
that. I'll send word to Rick via email.
Thank you very
Please tell
much. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
No, only because you're talking about language, Mitty. So you said that Galicia is an autonomous region in Spain, right?
Yeah.
So they speak like Spanish and Portuguese, kind of a mix, or
They
how does
don't
that work?
speak Portuguese per se. They speak Galegan, and they're very proud of their language. They even have a day of literature of the Galegan language. So they can understand Portuguese, but it's Gallego. But they speak both Castellano and Gallego. Just like in Barcelona, they speak Catalan and Castellano. And the Basques speak Basque, which is really quite a different language, but all of Spain speaks Castellano because it was like an edict, you know, everyone had to learn it. So everyone does know it. But all the different regions, and there's 17 autonomous regions, which are like our states. And there's a lot of different languages, but Catalan and Galegan are probably the most well-known departures, you know. But all the regions have local languages, yeah. It's really interesting. It's how other things are organized. They have different flags too. there's a flag for each one, just like we have our state flags. And there's a provincial flag. There's 4 provinces in Galicia, and each one has a flag. Yeah. So most state buildings in Galicia will show. Actually, most state buildings will show the European flag, the Spanish flag in Galicia, and the Galician flag. So not so much cities. Yeah, not so much cities.
It sounds like a lot of the families there produce their own wines. Do they have wineries?
There are wineries there. There are wine regions there, Albarino, and you should talk to my husband because I never remember the names of these things. He's sort of the wine buff, and he, for a long time, he subscribed to Wine Spectator, so he can tell you all these, like, oh yes, in this region they have this and this, and he's got favorite, but they have wineries. But what's more typical is because it's so rural, every home in every village makes their own wine. And they're very sly about it, like Antonio. So I can tell you this. I couldn't say this in Galicia, but Antonio didn't make the best wine. Aba did. And Manolo, when they would always offer us their wine. And so when we would go to Manolo and Aba's, Manolo would very slyly say, like, how do you like Antonio's wine? You know, and we knew he was just being so naughty, you know, because we always said, oh, it's pretty good, you know, but Aba's is the best, you know, and get out of that conversation. But yeah, they all made it, including Miguel. Miguel lived across the lane from us, and he used to bring us, the first time we were there, he brought us this big diet soda bottle, Diet Coke bottle. And we thanked him, you know, and thought, how are we going to tell him we don't drink, you know, we don't drink soft drinks at all. And then something happened that made us take the lid off, and the aroma of wine came out. That's how they store their wine. They don't throw anything away. It's a frugal society, and they make everything last. And so they'll bring up that's their carafe of wine that they'll bring up is a 2-liter bottle of homemade wine. And so they were lovely. They would give us their wine and eggs and vegetables from the field. And Miguel used to bring Coke bottles full of aguardiente, which we never could finish. I mean, we never could drink much. It's just too strong. So we would give it to a friend of ours in Portugal that loves that. So every time we would go to Portugal, we'd say, we have some aguardiente for you, Armando.
Okay, Elizabeth, yeah, why don't you read from Deadly Verse?
I'm sorry, what?
I said, why not read something from the Deadly Verse?
Oh, well, do you have time?
Sure.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize how much time we had. I thought I had 40 minutes, so I was timing myself with these poems. Yes, okay. How much time do I have?
Oh, another 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Deadly Verse is like the one before. It's set in Braga, Portugal. I don't know if you can see this.
Yes.
And it involves a poem claimed to be an original poem by Portugal's greatest poet, Renaissance poet, Luís Camões. And you wouldn't believe how that's spelled, but we won't go there right now. That would waste too much time. But Carla and Owen are an American couple that are in Braga because Owen is overseeing a hotel remodel for his employer, who has Portuguese heritage. So he wants to start this new chain, start in Portugal and then branch out to world portal ends. And Carla, who has her own business in San Francisco as an interior designer, has joined him. And then she conducts her business via Skype. So anyway, that's the background for this. Now, they have met an old college chum of Owen's who has asked them to save overnight a poem that he's afraid to leave in his room. He expects it to make him a fortune. He's visiting, and he has kind of pulled them into this and then disappeared on them. And then the next thing they know, the police commissioner, the detective commander has called them in for questioning in his office. And he's had experience with Carla in book 1 because her snoopiness gets her into trouble every time. Okay, so this is the background. She's being interrogated, interviewed by the detective in his office, okay? The office was like the detective, neat, spare, everything in its place, papers in a tray, a paperweight holding 3 small notes next to a computer, a picture of a woman she assumed was his wife and who should, in her opinion, look more long-suffering. A plaque on the wall commended him for something. White plaster walls, wood trim. The front waiting area had similar decor. So what do you think? Asked Detective Fernandez with a wry smile. Apparently he had been following her glance around the room. Do you like my office? Slightly embarrassed, Carla said, it's a habit I can't break. It comes from being an interior designer. I'm always noticing decor. What would you do to this office? He asked with interest. To be honest, you could use a few paintings, something with color. I will keep that in mind. More color. Now, he sat back and folded his hands on the edge of the desk, tapping his thumbs together. Tell me everything you can remember about the conversation at dinner last night with your friend. I don't really know him, she said. He's Owen's college friend, but through the years, they've only kept touch through e-cards at Christmas. He was a hotel manager on a cruise line until recently. Last night, he told us he quit, but he didn't say exactly when. Did he say why? He was all enthused about a new career he's starting as a bookseller here in Braga. He was deciding between 2 shops, and he has a supply of books he's been collecting in some storage locker over the years. I remember that because Owen was impressed he already has an inventory. He's giving up hotel management to start a bookstore. What about capital? That's what we wondered. But he has this, this is awkward. He wants to go into rare books and first editions. And he says he's going to finance it with what is supposed to be an original document of a poem by Camões. He said he had a bank account here too. Detective Fernandez looks surprised. You know how to say Camões? Your Portuguese lessons must be paying off. He says that an original document of a poem by Camões is worth quite a lot. Camões is our national treasure, Fernandez murmured. Go on. He was going to meet with a bookseller here in town who found him a buyer willing to pay $1.5 million if it's authentic. The buyer was bringing an expert with him today to determine whether it is. But then Hugh sent my husband a message. It's complicated. I'm sure we can sort it out. Go on. Well, the evening turned creepy. He said he was afraid to leave the poem in his room overnight, and he asked Owen to keep it for him and then bring it to the bookshop today. Only he didn't show up today. Fernandez gave her a sharp look. Did he say why he was afraid? Only that he didn't trust the hotel safe. He worried someone would steal it. Why is this creepy? It seems sensible with a document like that. It was his manner, very melodramatic. He had the poem in an envelope pinned inside his jacket, and he worked out a switch with Owen in the men's room. I'm sure Owen gave it to you. The detective's face was non-committal. Detective Fernandez, I know Owen gave it to you, Both of us want to be rid of that thing. Owen's been calling him all day, but Hugh never answers. So, Senor Winter and your husband made the switch, and then what happened? Well, it was late, dinner was over. We walked him to the hotel desk and parted ways and went home. Nothing else? Yes, as a matter of fact, Carla said. The desk shift had changed and a young man was at the counter. He said 2 women had called and he put the calls through to his room since they each wanted to leave a message. Also, she remembered, earlier during the meal, a man came to the restaurant, looked around, seemed to take note of our table, then went out to the back garden and had a smoke like he was waiting. Fernandez lifted his brows. Do you remember what time this was? Can you describe him? Just that it was during our meal. He had kind of a weasel face. The detective's mouth twitched. And what does a weasel's face look like? Oh, you know, a long face and sort of a pointed nose. She made a little sculpting gesture with her hand. Was he still there when you left? I think so, because he was there when Hugh went into the restroom. Owen was supposed to wait 4 minutes, go in, then Hugh come out, Owen come out 4 minutes later. It was all very dramatic. Interesting, Fernandez murmured. 2 women call, a man in the garden seems interested in your table. And that was the last you saw or heard of Senor Winters when you walked him to the desk. No, he called us later on Owen's phone. Owen was asleep. When I saw who it was, I muted the phone thinking Owen could call back this morning. But Hugh sent a message a few minutes later telling Owen to keep the poem till he contacted him again. Then we didn't see that until this morning. Owen's been trying to reach him all day, but he doesn't answer. And when I went around to his hotel room, some police were in his room. You went to his room. Feeling Fernandez's chilly disapproval, she said, we've been worried about him. We were about to report him missing when you called. I went to the bookstore he told us about too, she said, since he would find out anyway. And the name of the bookstore, she told him. Behind the wire rims, Fernandez's eyes narrowed. Senora Bass, why did you go to this bookshop? I wanted to see if he would show up since he seemed to be avoiding our phone calls. And I also want to see what kind of people might pay €1.5 million for a poem by a dead poet. At his frown, she said quickly, I didn't know Camoinks was a national treasure, but even so, you have to admit, $1.5 million is a lot for one piece of paper. In the long silence that followed, he continued to tap his thumbs. I was curious, she confessed. He touched his fingertips slightly to his forehead. Finally, he said, Senora, I am telling you, and not for the first time, as you well know, it is not always good to be curious. And he's quite right. Later on, she gets into a lot of trouble because of that.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
And thank you. Thank you. How are we doing on time now?
Oh, yeah, we're gonna, this is the time that we usually open it up for other people if they would like to read, or if other people want to ask some
Good.
questions about the
Well, I'd like
book.
to hear them. I'd like to hear them read because
Sure.
some of them that I know are my favorite poets.
Hi,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I have some guests who have just arrived, so I need to say goodbye. It was so wonderful hearing you read, Elizabeth. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Elvira.
And goodbye to everybody. I'm sorry I can't hear everybody else read. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Allegra.
Bye.
And yeah, I also want to say it was a real pleasure to hear you tonight. Thank you so much for appearing. Thank you, Rick, for having her. I also
welcome.
need to leave, but thank you. Loved hearing it.
Oh. Okay, hopefully I'll see you Tuesday.
Okay, I see Norma's been waving at me. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Norma. Unmute yourself, Norma. Let's see. Norma, you have to unmute yourself. Yeah, she's not unmuting herself. Norma, we can't hear you. You need to unmute yourself. Don't seem to be able to unmute her.
Oh,
Yeah, Norma, we can't hear you, Norma. You have to unmute yourself. Anybody else wanted to? Okay, Jennifer, go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go.
Oh, I'm mute now. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is Signing Rain. Our sign language study groups gathered with coffee and scones around the Starbucks table. We're 5 women, 18 to 80, retired teacher, home caregiver, 2 businesswomen, student. We practice signs for weather. Sun, snow, wind, thunder. We watch our leader sign rain, hands raised, palms down, all fingers spread, then let hands fall, like sheets of rain flooding chaos into our lives, into stories we share between lessons. We tell of botched surgeries, car accidents, autistic grandchildren, adopting drug-addicted babies, moving from Mexico. Sometimes we forget to take sips, our eyes widened toward each new friend, learning how we survived, how we thrived, why we can sign with one forearm rising in a half arch, meaning rainbow.
Ah, lovely.
Thank you. And I really enjoyed your poems, Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you.
That they put me right there in Galicia with you.
Thank you.
Your images, it was really clear. And you captured the feelings that you felt there as well.
Thank you.
Celeste, go ahead. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I have to go pretty soon. I have to leave. So I just wanted to say thank you, Mitty, for your wonderful poetry. It's like I was like right there with you. Your images are so strong, and that I was tasting the food and the wine, and I was with you on those dusty roads and those misty paths and everything. Thank you so much for
Thank
reading for us, and thank you, Rick, for having her.
You bet.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Anyone else?
Okay, so you want to leave.
Did Norma ever unmute herself?
No, she's still muted. I sent her a message.
No. She's such a good poet. I'm sorry.
I'd like to read a poem, Rick, if I might.
Sure, Dan, go for it.
As we all know, there's a holiday coming up called Halloween. And as a child, I remember how much fun that always was with the pumpkins and the cats and the skeletons, but most of all, the ghosts. This poem is called Ghosts. A big old-fashioned farmhouse once sat in a field by itself, had long since been surrounded by a ring of modest homes, the children of which often enjoyed climbing on its veranda, peering through its dusty, pebbled, multi-light windows, had an interior both somber and somehow compelling, whispering as it did of times long ago and the way people used to live and die. There was a basement that ran the full length of the house, and word had it that long ago parties were held there, and gambling and drinking, and people with greedy or violent faces went up and down the stone steps leading below. Someone said that on one stormy night, a person had been stabbed on those same stone steps underneath our feet. Every Halloween, my friends and I would mark the day by a rite of passage in which we would go two at a time through the dark basement to the far wall, touch that wall, then turn and return to the stone steps on the opposite end. Knock on the slanted wooden door to be allowed to blink into the autumn light like two moles. Halfway back, one of us would holler, "Look out!" and start running. Both of us scrambling through fetid gloom, sensing that long, sharp fingernails were cleaving the air behind us. Other boys would gather around asking what we'd seen, and we'd respond with torrid stories of witches and goblins and close calls under the moldy flooring of that old house. We didn't tell them of a shadowy figure in a bowler hat, or of a lady with long flowing hair floating in the corner. Nor did we describe the muted rumble we heard of a Model A Ford.
Oh.
Spooky.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan.
Rick,
Yes, Norma, we can hear you now.
Dan and all, I finally found the right button and unmuted myself. And I'm so thrilled to have a chance to say it's just been heavenly to hear Mitty and see her and all of you dear poets that I've loved for a long time, and including you. So I have inconsistent internet. Sometimes it's off completely, so it's been spotty, and of course I didn't adjust my hearing aids loud enough, so I missed a lot. But I heard your voice and I saw you and Rick and Jennifer and all of the other people that I've loved so long for so much. and I see Alberta has left us, I guess. But anyway, it was wonderful to see and hear her. So thank you. And Rick, I'm immensely grateful to you and to Mitty for this lovely afternoon experience. So I won't chatter on any longer. I think that will do it.
Do you have a poem for us also? Norma, do you have a poem? Do you have a poem?
Do I have a phone?
A poem.
Yes. And so that's my lifesaver when the internet is off. Then I can get Gmail. I tried to bring up this on my phone and I couldn't. Maybe it's because I already had it on this. I have a new old lady Chromebook, which is familiar to all students because they use it. It was something I didn't know about and read about in Art Magazine, got it, and my granddaughter is helping me become acquainted with it, and so that's what I'm looking at right now. So maybe have a good travel, and my gosh, you are prolific. And you're a wonderful poet. So
you had some those poems too, Norma. Yeah, you had some input into those poems too.
I see. I'm not hearing everything.
She said that
you helped with some of those poems too. I brought some of them to class, and you had some help. So
Well, I hope to get back to the poetry workshop if I can find a ride, because my ride is not available anymore. And I don't think will be for a while. It's beginning to look not so good. Anyway, I'll see you, perhaps some of you, on Song of the San Joaquin. And so I will make.
Uh-oh.
No, she froze.
Looks like your camera froze.
100th birthday in May.
Yeah, you froze there, Norma. We lost you for about 20
you.
seconds.
I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed Dan's poem. I thought it was just great. The atmosphere and the whole incident that he put out, and then the conclusion at the end that there really are ghosts. I really love that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that
Thank
was
you
really
very
cool.
much. Thank you, Jeff.
So I'm going to say goodbye to you all now.
Bye-bye, Norma.
Norma. Bye, Norma.
Well, thank you again, Elizabeth.
I can
We will see you
get
next
out.
month. And Mark States will be the featured reader. And circle on your calendar December 4th for Poetry Power, for a formal presentation from some of the students there in the Santa Clara area. So we'll see you again next month.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Emily.
So much.
Elizabeth, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
And remember, there's that link. I'll leave it on for a couple more minutes if somebody wants to click on that link to check out some of Elizabeth's publications on Amazon that are available.
Thank you so much, Rick. I can't thank you enough for this opportunity.
Oh, you bet. We're very lucky to have you. Thank you.
Ciao.
Take care.
Ciao.
And safe travels.
Thank you. Now, if I leave, I can't look at that chat, can I?
She said,
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Goodbye.
Bye.